that up here. Full screen. Okay. Should I get going, or we want to wait for more
Yeah,
folks?
you can go ahead and start, I think. We'll let
Okay.
people as you go.
Y'all see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yes, 1 million cups. The thing that we reach out to entrepreneurs in the area as much as possible, or we're interested in the area. And some of the most important things that they should realize is that this is not a pitch. You're not out to get clients. You're not out to sell your services. You are making a presentation to other entrepreneurs that have been through or are going through exactly what you're going through right now. And it's to get advice. We want to know what your company is doing and how they're doing it, and what are you doing in order to sell your company. Let people know that you are around so that they can come to you, advertising, things like that. And so the goal of the presentation is to ask the question. First, tell us these are the problems I have, and then ask, what can we do for you? So it's about making connections in the community that you can use. You can say, hey, I'm having this problem, or have you ever had to deal with this? And you can call somebody up or meet them for a cup of coffee and discuss your issues. All of us are volunteers. We don't, none of us get any money out of this. We organize it and basically invite you in and say, okay, talk, and then we'll ask questions. We can learn from you as you're giving your talk as well. And it's important that when you're doing your presentation and in the Q&A, if there's a question that you are particularly interested in, but nobody seems to be bringing it up, go ahead and ask again. I kind of went through a little bit of this already. We meet every week, Wednesdays at 9 o'clock, as much as possible. So far, this is our third meeting, and we are doing well. We want to have 2 presenters, and the only thing that the presenter has to have is that they have to be less than 5 years old. And of course, you wouldn't be here, I would hope, if you weren't willing to ask for help. And then, like I said before, what can we do as a community to help you? And these are us. Like I said, all volunteers. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mick. Yes, 5 years old in terms of your company age, not your age, obviously.
Oh, did I say age?
No,
Did
no,
I
I
really?
was just clarifying.
Oh, okay.
Sounds funny to say you have to be less than 5 years old.
I was totally thinking that.
Yeah, right. Hey, for those of you who, I saw some people going in and out of the waiting room. Did you get kicked out or something? Like I saw Josh and Jen, you guys went in and out of the waiting room.
No, I just switched from my phone to my computer.
Oh, okay. All right. Perfect. All right. All right, great. So the other thing I just wanted, before we introduce our first presenter, Finply, I want to just let everyone know that, first of all presenters, so Jen, I'm looking at you, who decide to apply, you get a 1 Million Cups mug. So all presenters get this mug. I know Tina's got hers on her right now for presenting at our first meeting. And then if you attend 5 consecutive 1 Million Cups Westminster meetings in a row, we will give you a travel mug. So the community gets something too for attendance. So we will keep track of those of you who are here every week. And when you hit 5, you get one of these. And then maybe we'll do a t-shirt or something at 10. All right, so let's get started without any further ado. Please welcome Finply, a Maryland-based financial modeling startup. We will be hearing from one of their co-founders, Garrett, and their other co-founder, Luis, is also on the call. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. We'll go through those at the end of the presentation after about 6 minutes. And please mute your mics while Garrett from Finply is presenting. Take it away, Garrett.
Awesome. Thank you. And just go ahead and share. Okay, everyone can see my screen. Oh, I can't see it. Anyone? If anyone's giving me a thumbs up. Are we good? Everyone can see?
Yeah, you're good.
You're
Yes.
good.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, I minimized the little box here. Okay, so again, I'm Garrett, and Luis is on here as well. Luis is the CEO. I'm CFO, and we created a financial modeling software to help startup founders and entrepreneurs to create better financial models for their startups. So when they have an idea and they're trying to refine that idea and then ultimately ask for investment or raise money down the line, Finply will help them do that. And we really came to this company from dealing with a few problems. So in the financial modeling space, there's a lot of complexity. Normally you need a degree in finance and have worked in the industry for a long time. Creating these models are really time consuming. And when you're starting a company, time is one of your most valuable resources. And as of now, there's not really an easy way to quickly do this. So, Luis kind of came up with the idea, him and I did a venture capital competition a few years back, and we realized that a lot of participants in that competition didn't understand financial modeling. So we kind of set out to help solve this. And what we're trying to do now is we're putting together a series of solutions. So each one of these are pretty much our products. So we're labeling them launch, growth, and life cycle. And the idea behind these is at certain stages, entrepreneurs require different tools. So for example, in the launch product, we're really focused on the really, really early stage folks who just care about financial forecasting. They want to forecast their sales, they want to forecast their expenses, and then get an idea of if their idea is going to be profitable or not. Then on the grow product, we get into a little bit deeper with capitalization tables, which is the ownership structure of a business. After a while, and after there's multiple investors, those cap tables tend to get really complex. So we plan to add a tool to help manage that. A market share tool to help entrepreneurs gauge their market effectiveness and how they compete in the industry. And then a raise tool to help them actually get connected with other entrepreneurs that may invest, or even the general public, and to investors to help them raise money. And then ultimately, it comes time for an entrepreneur to kind of sell off their business. So we're working on an exit tool to help with valuations and, determining if an initial public offering is the way to go, or if they should sell the business, etc. And we realize that this market opportunity is fairly huge. I mean, there's about 300 million entrepreneurs that start businesses globally, and just in the U.S., where we're targeting. We're really working to connect with a lot of the incubators, accelerators, and just university programs out there. There's 1,400 across the country before shifting over to just general U.S. startups that receive VC funding every year. And this is kind of what we've done so far. So, we talked briefly a little bit ago about some accelerators. We went through an incubator. Well, we're still in the incubator, and we just finished an accelerator program. We launched our website, and now we're kind of onboarding customers. We're in the process of signing our second deal with an accelerator, which is great. And we're gonna start doing workshops in December. We're actually partnering with the DC Startup Week to hold a financial modeling workshop for some of their community members. Which is great because it gets us out there and helps us to connect with folks. Let's see. So our team, so, as I mentioned, Luis, he spent about a little over 20 years working in private equity and really dealing with businesses and trying to do financial modeling with businesses. He has a good background in education, went to Kellogg. And then we also have Anish, who has a background in software development. And all three of us met actually at American University. Luis and Anish did a master's in analytics, and I was there doing a master's in finance, and we've been great friends ever since. So, we kind of share the same bond to build products and help entrepreneurs, kind of change the world and achieve their dreams. And just a little bit about the competitive landscape. So kind of where we're trying to position ourselves. We want to be easy for entrepreneurs to use, and we also want to be affordable. So on the affordable side, competition is like Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets, and then there's some companies that kind of focus more on larger scale modeling, like LTSE and LivePlan, but they're a little bit expensive. And with that, thank you so much. There is a link here for a survey. If anyone's interested in just giving us thoughts beyond the Q&A that we'll have here in a second, or if you're interested, we're looking for advisors too, so you can put your information in there, or just want to stay connected with us. I could drop that in the chat, but thank you so much, and our contact information's there as well.
Excellent. Great job, Garrett. Thank you very much.
Yep.
So yes, and if you can stop presenting, we can go back to the viewing screen. And I see, yes, thank you for posting that link in the chat as well. So anyone who wants to copy and paste that link to go fill out their survey, please do. So let's see here. First comment from Tamar. Nice deck, very meta, a startup helping startups. Yes, indeed. And investors seem to love that. VCs and investors seem to love to invest in companies that serve their industry. So I have no doubt you guys be interesting to some VCs out there. Josh Ambrose from McDaniel. By the way, that was Tamar Osterman from Maryland Economic Development. Josh Ambrose from McDaniel College asks, how does this compare / sync up with the built-in projection / assessment tools in Square and other similar e-commerce apps? Now, is Square a competitor of yours, you guys? Is this something that you've thought about at all?
So we are geared more towards pre-seed, pre-revenue companies. It's for almost the ideation stage at the moment, so that's where we are more synced. Once you have revenue and everything, we don't have the APIs ready to connect, but our second suite will probably be able to connect with QuickBooks and other accounting software to help you do projections. So right now, it's all for pre-seed, pre-revenue. But of course, if you have some revenue and want to project out into the future, you can do it, but there's no integration yet with accounting software.
And one thing we see is, we don't want to be an accounting software, but of the accounting softwares that are out there, they're really historical focused, so they don't allow you to do projections. So we see entrepreneurs actually using Finply in tandem with their accounting software to share the historical data and then be able to make projections based off of that data quickly. Thank you.
Mark Weingram is acknowledging Veterans Day. He says, happy birthday, Marines, and happy Veterans Day. He asks, how do you view indirect competitors like Carta in valuation and cap table management or bookkeeping and accounting services such as Zendu?
Yeah, I think we will offer our second suite has a cap table management that won't be as robust as the one that Carta has or as detailed, but it will be pretty good with what our design is right now. But again, we are targeted to earlier stage companies. Carta probably makes sense if you're doing Series A or B or something like that. We are in the seed, pre-seed stage, and so there is a different of focus there right now. As we scale up, we do want to start taking on some of their business, but initially we are focused more on earlier stage companies.
And there's like a critical gap in the market that's I mean, when startups don't have money, these big companies don't want to like give them the time of day. So there's this niche in the market of these folks that kind of come from non-technical backgrounds. They don't have accounting, finance backgrounds, but they have brilliant ideas. And oftentimes the financial modeling part and the finance part is one of the biggest hurdles to them actually making their business successful.
Well, and I think one of the advantages, I've seen your demo personally, and by the way, I think any startup that's raising money needs to connect with you guys, especially as a fellow Maryland-based startup. Maybe you'll have some sort of Maryland perk for your fellow startups to come in and test your platform. That's also a question, I guess. But yeah, it's a really impressive platform. Let's see. Sorry, I got distracted. Tina Thomas asks, is this a software that must be downloaded, or is it cloud-based or an app?
Right now it's a web app, and so you create a offline file that helps power it, and we're moving to the cloud full time in about 2 or 3 weeks with our new launch. And so it's a web app where you go. And more than a web app, our website aims to be a community where you can interact with other founders and get feedback from us and from everyone on finance. And so if you have questions about finance, about how to label things, about financial terms in the entrepreneurship space, we aim to be the place where you get those questions and answered, and you get the help you need to build the financial model. This is kind of important. We like our tool, but what we want to really do is help non-finance people learn finance through building a model in an environment that automates the boring stuff, but actually makes you focus on the important stuff. And that's the ultimate goal.
And there's an opportunity to standardize this process as well. And if you become an industry standard that VCs trust, then that's an opportunity for establishing yourselves as that trusted source. Rick Leimbach from Startup Portal, he asks, do you require hands-on assistance with the founders to get the model set up, and how interactive is it compared to Live Plan?
Yeah, so great question here. So this is one thing I guess I didn't touch on in the deck, but as of now, we offer 2 plans. There's a freemium plan, so it's Finply Lite, so you can go in there and make an account and get access to the community, the forum, blog, and get access to our free app, all for no charge. And then we have a premium app, which if you sign up for that, it's as of now, it's $10 a month. It's a recurring subscription. And when folks sign up for that, we actually send them an email and we do like an onboarding call with them. So the free folks actually just have the help documentation, the forum and stuff to kind of look at, just to share volume. We can't, for every free customer, we can't set up a 30-minute call and provide like a premium type support. But folks definitely get that if they do pay for the service.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jennifer Yang from Covalent Spirits asks, is there a particular industry this software is better geared towards? For startups, a lot of the difficulty is identifying and modeling the various factors, which are often industry specific. In other words, the details that go beyond the model. How can this application help with that?
Yeah, so great question. And so, sorry, Luis, I'm jumping in here. So this is actually something that's huge. So oftentimes founders come into the entrepreneurship space and they think that their business is so unique that no one has ever done it before, when in reality, most businesses, you could take the industry out of it and the actual business itself, how they charge customers, the business model is fairly standardized across the globe, really. And there's about 9 different business models which you could really classify most companies into. You may have like a secondary way of charging your customers, but most startups actually focus on one type of way. And what we're doing is really breaking it down to help these founders think about, hey, instead of the industry, which we talk about the industry, we get them to think about their business from a segment, and then looking at it from, hey, how do you actually charge your customers? Do you run ads? Do you sell a subscription service? Is it a good that you mail to them? Thinking about it like that helps them really just narrow down the gamut of things, and also lets them test different models. So if, like an example I always use is, imagine if Facebook was a subscription model where you had to pay, a $5 or $10 fee every month as a user. Do you think that they would have been as successful as they are today if they would have done that instead of, running ads like they do for their business model? So that's something we definitely help with.
Thank you. Mark Weingram has another question. Given your focus on early stage and an emphasis on forward modeling, how do you integrate or onboard companies that have few, if any, fundamentals? Are you able to build a growth expectation relying on broader market data and the company's narrative?
So right now we rely on the entrepreneurs doing and showing them how to do some of the research to get to their fundamentals and their assumptions. And then most of the things within your model can be modified instantly, like the growth rate and pricing, for example, so that you can create scenarios very quickly and create instead of a point estimate, a range estimate for your growth, for your sales. And so that's how we deal with that uncertainty. Our next iteration, again, what we're building is hopefully will allow founders to know and direct them on how to think about market share and growth projections more in more detail.
Excellent. Yeah, I would imagine too that a distribution model for you guys would be to connect with or partner with like the angel lists and the F6Ss out there to have them license your technology as something that they offer to the startups when they're applying. Or I think other one's Gust, another one.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought about that?
So our early adopters right now are incubators, accelerators, and entrepreneur led or communities. And so that's the idea, but we haven't reached to the larger ones like angel list or something, because we want to build a customer base first and be sure that our products are working for everyone, and then launch on a bigger scale.
Mm-hmm. And so to that, then, if there's no other questions from the rest of the group here, will we ask, as a tradition of 1 Million Cups, what can the community do for you?
Yeah, great question. Well, first off, thanks for letting us present and everything. I think it's a great experience just getting to tell our story and then get feedback on it. It helps us tremendously. But one thing I would ask is if anyone knows any organizations, it doesn't have to be just startups, but like even like business organizations at like the government level, folks that are trying to encourage entrepreneurship. We'd love to talk to them. We've actually, in addition to talking to like early stage startup founders, VCs, we've also talked to CFOs. We've talked to project managers and organizations, because no matter where you are, most of the time there's a financial component to some of the stuff that you're doing, especially when it's new. So we actually see this software as being a good tool for, say, a project manager that has to quickly model the ability of a project to be successful or not, and given the different ways of charging their customers, the different cost structures, etc. So we see this helping not just startup founders, even though we're entering the market that way. And we'd be happy, if anyone knows any folks that we could get connected with. I mean, Luis and I are always on phone calls, meeting with people from accelerators from governments, all kinds of stuff, universities, etc.
I
Well, I
think there-
know.
oh,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Luis. Sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
there's a question from Michael about very small companies and founders that have no idea where to start, and that's exactly our target market. The idea is the apps are a tool, but the purpose of Finply is to help entrepreneurs learn finance and the financial verbiage and jargon through lead them in successfully navigating entrepreneurship using those standard tools which are required for everyone to know, but to help them learn those in our environment. That's what we aim to do. So sorry, Graham, I cut you off.
No, that's fine. That's great. And actually, for Magic, one of our community sponsors who I work for, this is a great tool that we can recommend to our startups that come through the door and say, hey, get the Finply app, make sure you're doing your financial predictions through this, as it's quickly becoming a standard, right? Like that's basically how we would see it as an institution. I'm curious how Rick from Startup Portal sees this. Rick, I'm going to call you out because I see that you got your video on still. If you want to unmute, I'd be curious to kind of just hear your perspective in how this relates to regulation crowdfunding. Is this something that could be used if you're raising through something like that, or is the SEC far too picky about?
I think the premise, whether it's crowdfunding or startups and incubators, is the same, is that the financial information that people need to put together needs to be in a format that the audience can understand. So what I see is that someone doesn't need to be an expert in financials. They need to just tell their story and be able to tell the financial story. The question I asked earlier about hands-on is, can you, what I find is that the entrepreneurs have these great ideas and they're fantastic. They're brilliant people. They come to the numbers guy and you got to help them tell that story. But when you ask them to sort of look under the hood of the engine, they open the hood and they're like, whoa, I don't understand. And they run for the hills. So that's where the interactive part and designing it so it's almost, you throttle it so that they can move the pieces versus, I highlight it blue in my models and say, touch this, and it doesn't seem they want to do that.
Yeah.
So, but with regards to crowdfunding, I think it just helps again, when you're pitching, whether it's to a crowd, to an individual, if you have the story, if it's concise and it shows that you've looked and done your research and it syncs up with your business plan, it's invaluable going in the door. I will say one thing I didn't hear from you guys was the output side. You're making sure the story, you're connecting with VCs. You want to get their buy-in too. So when someone knocks on the door with the Finply product, they have confidence in it. So I would pitch that side as well. And obviously I'd be glad to offline talk with you guys. Certainly there's a need in the market.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Garrett.
Thank you, Rick. So this came about from talking to angel investors and VCs and trying to figure out what one of the big hurdles was for companies to get finance. And our output right now is information that is used by VCs and angels, and we are refining and trying to get as close to an industry standard. Like Graham said, it doesn't really exist as possible, but this is a point of where we're at, and so far we've ourselves pitched using our own tool and gotten good reviews on what the output is and how easy it is to understand, and that's our experience, but it's something we're working constantly on improving.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you for presenting, gentlemen. Great presentation. Great question and answer. Thank you, everyone who asked questions. I'll remind everybody that further up in the chat is that bit.ly link from Finply for their survey. So if you scroll up, you'll see it. There it is again. Thank you, Garrett. So check that out. They're looking for different ways to engage, and I think it's part of it's recruiting advisors, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, recruiting advisors, just anyone that wants to stay connected with us, or even just connecting us with an organization or a person that works at an organization that could potentially use Finply, either as a customer, or we're also looking to partner with folks as a technology partner. So basically, we just allow your communities to get access to Finply, you know, for a discounted rate, and you know, kind of be like a partnership type thing. So you know, happy to get introduced to really anyone.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for having us, and it's
Thanks
been
again,
an
guys.
amazing experience. Thank you.
And feel free to hang on the call if you can and join with the remainder of it. I'm also going to post a link here for Furnace Hills Coffee. So they are one of our other community sponsors. You get 25% off their coffee on their online web. You know, you can order coffee online. You get 25% off if you use that discount code 1MC Westminster at Furnace Hills Coffee. They're right here on Main Street in Westminster. Okay, we're going to transition to the next presentation, which is actually me. So I'm going to put on a different hat, but I'm going to hand it over to Val, and we have a poll that we can launch real quick. Val, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. I've got some big shoes to fill here, Graham. You do a great job, but Graham just launched a poll here that we'd love to know, do you identify yourself as an entrepreneur? If you will take a moment to respond. Okay, looks like everyone has voted and the results are in. It looks like 75%, so 3/4 of our group this morning identify yourself as an entrepreneur. That's pretty awesome. And so it looks like we are doing a great job of what we intended, and that is bringing entrepreneurs together to help raise each other up. So our next presentation is going to be a local Westminster startup, and that is Garnish Health. And to speak about Garnish Health this morning, we have Graham Dodge, the founder of Garnish Health. And sir, you have 6 minutes. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very unique situation to switch gears like this and put myself in the hot seat. Let me go ahead and present, and I trust everyone can see my screen. So yes, thank you everybody. I'm Graham Dodge. I am one of the co-founders of Garnish, or Garnish Health. It's a health cost sharing network that's designed for everyone. The problem that we are trying to solve with Garnish is that the 25% of the US population has inadequate or no health insurance at all. Out-of-pocket spending for people with employer-provided health insurance has actually increased by more than 50% since 2010. So that's certainly not in line with inflation or anything else like that. Meanwhile, insurance companies only have to spend about 80% of your premium on your health care. So the other 20% of that goes to administrative overhead, which is one of the reasons why costs sort of have ballooned over the years. And this essentially means that what the insurance companies are telling you, the client and the patient, is go fund yourself. Let's see here. Sorry. Okay, so our solution that we've come up with is a subscription-based peer-to-peer payment platform for health cost sharing. We also like to describe it as Venmo for medical bills. So if you've ever used Venmo for sharing a bill or splitting a bill, the concept is the same, but this would be a HIPAA-compliant platform where you could safely post your medical bills and have the community pay it. So it's not like Venmo or GoFundMe where you need to sort of self-promote and it's sort of one directional. It's actually reciprocating. So everyone who's part of the community in Garnish is contributing to everyone's bills as though they were paying a premium, and then they garnish amounts from their premium to go to all the different people through direct ACH transfers. We would also protect the solvency of the network through using smart enrollment periods. Our goal here is to also take away subjectivity of, you know, whether or not we deny pre-existing conditions, or like some of the faith-based health cost-sharing networks, whether we're denying based on what the procedure is or based on faith. So we take some of the subjectivity out of that and then turn to big data to try to do a smart data science approach to risk with these smart enrollment periods. And then, of course, we want all of this to mean that we're driving down the price and making this as affordable as possible, potentially as a complete alternative to insurance or COBRA. So if you've been laid off, everyone knows how expensive COBRA would otherwise be. Or maybe you have insurance and you use this as gap coverage because you have high deductible plan. How it works is that this would be a web-based app at first, but eventually a mobile app as well with a native experience. But you register. New members can register when the enrollment window open. That smart enrollment says that this person in this zip code at this time is allowed to enroll. And then they choose the amount of coverage they need, so they can actually dial in exactly how much they think they need versus how much they can pay, and how many dependents they need to cover for that amount. And it calculates what their total monthly premium would be. When they have a bill, they tell the provider that they're paying cash. And that often gets you nearly a 50% discount right off the bat. So you're coming to the network with a discounted expense already. You post it to the network through basically photo of your bill, and there will be tools to redact private information that you don't want shared, just as you would on GoFundMe in terms of you sort of disclose as much as you're willing to disclose. Then the members all have access to these bills, and on a monthly basis, they go in and they decide which bills they're going to prioritize and they're going to pay and how much they're going to garnish from their monthly premium to each of those other bills. And they can either approve it or they can shuffle it, and shuffling it will also flag it for fraud. So we're basically taking the claims adjudication process and also crowdsourcing it to help keep costs low. And then finally, you also, final step is you pay, when you pay somebody else for their bill, it comes out as an ACH direct transfer from your account to their account. And then a portion also then goes to Garnish for the transaction as part of the revenue model. So our revenue model, speaking of which, is that we would just simply charge a 5% transaction fee for every transaction in the platform. We can actually control this depending on how successful the network is. If the network can withstand it, we would charge 5%. If it needs a little bit more help, we can reduce that back down to like 2.5%, maybe even 2%, and still cover the administrative costs and be profitable. So here's an example of 1 month where we have 5,000 active users. There's a total estimated transaction of $1.9 million, and the gross revenue to Garnish would be $96,000 that month. Our financial projections really is driven then by the number of users we have based on what we're charging as the average premium. So it's easy to then calculate, what 5,000 members looks like in year 1 versus 100,000 members in year 4, which would approach 25 million a year in revenue. Our competition is basically GoFundMe is one solution to this problem. GoFundMe is often used to pay for medical bills, even in countries with universal health care. So if Bernie Sanders had become president, there would still be a role for Garnish, in other words. In fact, over 1/3 of GoFundMe campaigns are actually for medical costs. However, users have to self-promote. Sometimes they have to get like a news story written about them to be successful. And in the end, only 90% of GoFundMe campaigns, of which, remember, 1/3 are for medical costs, ever reach their goal. The other solution that we're seeing in this realm is actually what has inspired Garnish Health, which is the health cost-sharing ministries, the HCSMs. They now help over 1 million Americans afford their medical costs at a fraction of the cost of traditional insurance. However, as I mentioned earlier, you have to fit into a box for them. You have to sign a statement of faith. You have to belong to a church to qualify, to get your pastor sign a letter that says you do in fact go to church. And they use this in a way to sort of de-risk, because they're counting on the fact that you're not abusing drugs, that you're not going to have an abortion, that like all these things that you might otherwise subscribe to based on your religious convictions help de-risk the network. But also excludes 25% of Americans. And what I've also found, and I've actually been a member of these myself in the past, is that it's non-standardized. You have to write a snail mail check sometimes to a different person every month, which is very challenging in terms of remembering and getting into the rhythm of paying. In terms of cost efficiency, this is sort of a landscape plot to kind of help you understand on an axis of high and low healthcare costs and an axis of what is like sort of considered a high and low medical loss ratio. That's an insurance term that basically says that, you know, in insurance, 80%, the 80-20 rule, 80% of your premium actually goes to the healthcare. That's what they call the medical loss, right? And then they keep 20% as their profit to cover overhead. So in this world, you see traditional insurance as the most the least cost efficient model, as an extension of people then using, you know, who can't afford their deductibles or whatever, and they go on GoFundMe. That's, you know, a little bit more efficient in that sometimes they're paying cash as well. The HCSMs, the healthcare cost sharing ministries, while their costs they're helping you afford the cash negotiated price, they themselves are charging MLR. So you're paying a higher premium based on that medical loss ratio being nearly as high as traditional insurance. And then,
Graham, you are at 8 minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you. And then Garnish, of course, is actually much more closely aligned with something like Medicare, the cost efficiency of that, which Medicare is somewhere between like 2 and 3% of your taxes go to pay for the overhead. This is our team, highly qualified, very attractive individuals from Garnish. Very proud to call them all co-founders. Several of them have in some way, shape, or form been trained or worked with Johns Hopkins. We have at least 2 of them on the call with us today, Daniel and Stetson as well, who can help me answer questions. Roadmap is that we're opening pre-registration right now, so you can go to garnish.health and you can pre-register. Once we get to 100,000 users, then we can turn on the network and convert what we expect to be about 5% of those users to paying users. And that's what we basically need to sort of safety load or front load the network. And then there's, you know, lots of more interesting stuff beyond. I'll stop there and open it up for questions. Thank you, Val.
Absolutely. Thank you, Graham. All right. So our first question comes from Josh Ambrose, a Magic Board member and McDaniel College employee. And he asks, how committed are you to the Garnish title? I think it's a term that usually or often has negative connotations.
Yeah, no, we've struggled with that. It's funny, my previous company, Sick Weather, we had this sort of similar issue of like the negative connotation of sickness, and people are like, oh, why don't you call it health weather? It's more positive. So when I was thinking of names for Garnish, I actually went into an anagram generator and typed in the word sharing, and out came the word garnish. I thought, oh, that's interesting, because garnish has sort of like this little symbolism of something extra on your plate. There is the negative connotation for having money garnished from your wages, but also the act of garnishing itself might actually be an appropriate metaphor for how you garnish your monthly premium to go to different people. So we're not stuck on it, certainly. And if it becomes challenging moving forward, we are flexible and nimble enough to change it. But that's how it came about, was using an anagram generator for the word sharing and seeing that garnish.health as a top level domain was available and affordable. It's all hard to find these days.
Garnish.health. I didn't even know there was a .health. Good to know. All right, from Mick, how does the paying cash work from the doctor's point of view? Wouldn't providers expect to be paid immediately before you leave the office?
Yes, and so that is one of the other challenges for being a part of a health cost sharing network, is that you do often have to pay upfront if it's under a certain amount. If it's over a certain amount, they will bill you, in which case then you do have that leeway to post the bill and get reimbursed for it before you then pay it. And ultimately, it's your responsibility to make sure that gets paid. So like any kind of reimbursement mechanism, it's incumbent on the person being reimbursed to actually pay the bill. And so that is part of the challenge. But in terms of the provider's perspective, they actually prefer it when you pay cash because they get paid right away. Again, if it's under a certain amount, they'll expect that right at the point of sale, so to speak, at the counter. If it's over a certain amount, they will usually agree to send you a bill, but still at that cash negotiated price.
Okay, another question from Josh. My main question was about bargaining with medical providers about the costs. How do you plan to do that, or teach your participants to do that?
So that is an education aspect to what this network will develop over time. So as the network itself becomes informed on what medical bills should cost, they start to have an expectation of how to negotiate for that price. So if you're having a cyst removed on your back and you've seen other people in the network go to a dermatologist and it costs them this much, you are actually getting that knowledge over time as being part of that network. We would like to crystallize that into like a concierge kind of function of the app that helps you understand what your procedure is and how much it should cost. And there are a lot of APIs out there that already exist that the Garnish app could tap into, informs the customer, the member, as to whether or not they're overpaying. And then that also affects how much they actually end up getting reimbursed from the network. If the network feels like you overpaid and you're not doing your job on behalf of the network to maintain that solvency, then the network will say, well, we're not going to finish paying this bill. You're going to still have to cover a certain amount of that.
Real quick, I'm going to jump. There was a follow-up from Mick's question. How do the providers tell Garnish that a client did not pay the bill?
They wouldn't. That would just be between the member and the provider. So yeah, that is where the member could get in trouble if they're not fiscally responsible and they take that reimbursed money and they go gamble, they put it all on black at the roulette table, then that's not Garnish's responsibility.
Okay. Tamara had a question that honestly, it was my question too. What about catastrophic events? And then she also says, or chronic conditions.
So we actually have, and Dan and Stetson can correct me on the terminology, but in our FAQs on Garnish.health, we have a whole section about like what the members are agreeing to. And so there's going to be certain things they agree to. Oh,
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, I've lost track of the question. Sorry.
That was, what about catastrophic events or chronic conditions?
And chronic conditions. So let's say you want to use Garnish for, getting glasses each year. We have it written in the sort of membership agreement that you understand that these aren't for continuing costs. You can get reimbursed one time, 1 year, maybe for your new glasses or, for your dialysis, but it's not to be used as a continuing to pay for those kinds of chronic conditions, which is otherwise would be completely forbidden under pre-existing conditions with certain networks, especially other health sharing ministries. They have that liberty to say, we're just not going to cover it. With Garnish, we're saying we'll cover it, but up to a certain extent that the network can tolerate in terms of maintaining solvency. So you are agreeing to certain conditions about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. In terms of catastrophic, you do choose how much you want to be covered for each year based on your number of dependents as well. I think right now we're looking at like a maximum of $500,000 coverage. So if it goes above and beyond that, then you are responsible for making other financial arrangements. So yeah, so it's more for the individual who is healthy. They don't want to have to pay an arm and a leg for insurance. They don't want to have high deductibles. They want to make sure there's some coverage. It's more ideal for those types of individuals.
All right.
They aren't snowboarding and racing cars either.
Would there be, this is from Garrett, our former presenter here, would there be a greater risk of fraud with this? I'm not sure what GoFundMe uses to verify the medical expenses, but I imagine there are ways to rig the system.
Right, and that's our biggest concern is fraud, and why we actually hope to leverage the crowd in terms of the wisdom of the crowd. So wisdom of the crowd is a quantifiable phenomenon in which when you give the crowd a question that, depending on the size of the network, they will more often than not come up with the right conclusion. And this has been studied again and again in different university research studies. So we're relying on the wisdom of the crowd to do the claims adjudication, to make sure that anything that looks fraudulent, that looks suspicious, gets then flagged to our team, our administrative staff. So there will still be some claims adjudication that needs to happen. There will be programmatic rules that will prevent people from posting certain bills. There's the membership agreement, and then there's the final sort of the main defense, which is the wisdom of the crowd and the claims adjudication of the members themselves. And then the final last line of defense would be claims adjudication at the administrative level.
We got nice work from Josh and great job, Graham. Let's see. We did mix follow-up. So another Garrett. Is there a quicker way to open the network? I would imagine you can reach out to specific medical providers and run tests with their current patients. Maybe negotiate rates with the provider, then have the provider do the advertising. Then Garnish will have a well-targeted sample pilot.
That's a great idea. We've also talked about connecting with benefit managers to make sure that we are they are a referral source for people who go into, who get sent COBRA packages. So as part of the COBRA package, you would get information about an alternative of, in this case, Garnish, that they could sign up for if they couldn't afford their COBRA insurance. But yeah, no, exactly. Trying to think of ways to, create distribution through these referral sources is exactly what we could use help with.
Questions are rolling in, Graham. To the extent that the ACA remains in force, is there a regulatory advantage wherein participation with this method exempts members from tax penalties for failure to procure traditional insurance?
Well, so President Trump, if we can still call him that, I don't know if we should or can, but he actually is responsible for removing the penalty that has sort of opened up the opportunity for non-religious faith-based organizations to participate in this model effectively, that paves the way for Garnish Health to do this, so that the member is not being taxed or being charged a penalty for not having insurance, should they decide to not have insurance. Now, this is actually different in different states. There are some states, I think Massachusetts is one of them, maybe New Jersey, maybe Vermont. There's just a handful of them that actually still will charge a state level penalty, even though the federal requirement is no longer there. Whether or not Biden undoes that remains to be seen. And we would just simply respond to that. And Dan Regan, my co-founder, who's our CFO, has more experience in the world of insurance. And if you can actually speak to this, what do you think that risk is at this point?
I mean, I think the risk of anything happening soon is low. Effectively, I guess the only risk that I see is more from a health insurance side, that they would be interested in undoing that, just to diminish the competition. But I don't really think that I would be very surprised if this is really on the radar of anyone as from the insurance side, where they would lobby to have this undone, or from a regulatory abuse, are that many people using these options now? I think the answer is no. So I would be surprised if it gets any attention.
Right, it's a small enough market, share, so to speak, that we would be able to sort of operate without becoming that kind of a threat to either the state's interests or the insurance. Now, of course, that's just a start. And so there's sort of a beg forgiveness, ask permission aspect to it, like when Uber would go into a city and deploy, or Bird scooters would deploy without actually getting official permission to do so. There's an element to that, to where if we actually gain market share early on, then we get this sort of momentum and inertia that then it's about, well, hey, are you going to take, is this elected official going to take away my Garnish, my ability to use this Garnish app for affordable healthcare? I'm going to write a letter to them saying I don't really like that. So you do get that kind of momentum potentially as a result of having that early progress in the current window of opportunity that's open.
So in the interest of time, there are a lot of questions. You're going to have to keep up with the chat, but I want to skip down to Tina's question, which Josh then added to, and I think it's a good one. What is the time/attention expectation for the members to review and adjudicate the claims and bills that have been submitted? Sounds like it could become overwhelming and cumbersome from a member standpoint, to which Josh says, great point, Tina. Graham, if the user base grows enough, do you anticipate networks within the system to manage that workload?
Yeah, absolutely. And what would eventually happen is they would start to divide into programmatic groups. And those programmatic groups could actually be determined by a certain amount of risk, so that we spread out the risk per group. So we're basically forming like mini pools or groups within the network. But at first, it would be small enough to where our algorithm could randomly assign and show bills. And this would also help with fraud, so that you can't use it for money laundering. So you are randomly assigned different bills to look at and review and approve. But we hope that it's so intuitive. It's like, people who are used to swiping right, swiping left when they like or dislike something. We want it to be at that kind of ease. And it is something that the health cost sharing ministries are doing now. Like they have the bill that they tell you to pay, but then they also have other things that you can volunteer to pay. And it's usually a list of like 5 or 6 different needs that the network couldn't otherwise afford. And so you're basically donating to these other people. That part of that is essentially what Garnish is turning into an entire model.
Okay, let's see. We have a 1 minute left for one last question. And this is a quick question from Mark. Does this rely on a diversified user base in terms of healthy profiles? If so, how do you incentivize the participation of the generally healthy?
Well, that's where the smart enrollment periods comes into play. Based on my experience at SickWeather and understanding how population health data that's available out there can be used to understand risk, so that we are initially opening up to populations that are less risky because, maybe it's a seasonal advantage in terms of it's not, the time of year where everyone gets injured. It's not a time of year where everyone's getting sick. So you have that. So there's less comorbidities, less people getting diagnosed with liver disease, at the onset. So there are things we can do to de-risk it by that alone. And then we use marketing and network effects. So if I have now a core group of people who are relatively healthy in a certain population that fits the sort of profile of what we're looking for to maintain solvency, those people then invite their friends. And that's basically how we would intend to try to optimize the network based on that kind of risk.
Okay, Graham, there are lots more questions in the chat. We're going to need to make sure we get those to you, and Graham will follow up. It is 9:59, and we didn't even get to the what can the community do for you question. So in 10 seconds or less, what can the community do for you?
Go to garnish.health. Sign up, even if you don't care about this and you have insurance and you've got the gold-plated insurance plan, sign up for it. It'll be helpful for us to get our network up, and then share it with your friends and see what they think about it. That, we're looking for all kinds of feedback, but mostly we want to get that initial numbers up for pre-enrollment.
Sweet. All right. Well, again, thank you to our community sponsors, Magic and Furnace Hills Coffee. Don't forget about the discount code that Graham has in there. And I saw something about a whiskey barrel coffee. If I were a coffee drinker, that would probably be my coffee of choice. Next week, we have 2 Westminster-based presenters, the Know Me ID, Casey Davis, and Together Studios, Jenna Shriver, who was on our call earlier and said goodbye early. So that's that. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.